Hello, friends, and welcome back to another prototype episode of Design Seeds, an idea for a podcast that I want to start. This is day 3, and I'm trying a new recording studio. So instead of recording this directly in Substack, I'm actually recording this in OBS Studio locally on my computer. So let's see if this fixes all those technical issues that happened, unfortunately, in my last recording. All right, so on to the good stuff. Today, I want to talk about moving fast and slow. This has been a recent theme in the past 6 months or so at work. And mostly this is about AI, but I also want to talk about how moving fast and slow applies at a broader level too. So I've been using this phrase pretty constantly, especially in the last few months, about moving fast and slow, because the place where I work, we are moving pretty slow when it comes to turning on and enabling our AI tools for our teammates. And it's because it's a bank, so they're very risk adverse. And so IT is very slow in reviewing and enabling new tools, especially AI tools, because there's a lot more uncertainty around what these are capable of doing and what might suddenly be capable once you turn these on, especially giving them access to your internal content. So I get it. I understand why things are moving slow. But at the same time, in the industry, things are moving fast, especially for designers and researchers. That AI is impacting the way people are working. And in operations, we're in the in-between zone where we both have to support our designers and researchers where they are right now with the current tool set that is currently available and provided to us. We are pushing forward with getting new tooling enabled, going through AI approval workflows to get those turned on. And we're also looking externally, saying, okay, what is going on in the industry? What do we need to be prepared for, such that once we can get tooling turned on, once we do get through all those approval processes, that we are able to run fast and catch up, basically, once those are turned on. So first, the slow. There's a lot of feelings. There's definitely a lot of feelings, especially frustration, when things are moving slower inside your company, inside your org, than you're seeing it happen out in the industry. So we're, managing those feelings of frustration. People are really excited. They want to start using the latest and greatest and figuring out how to put it into their design and research workflows. But every time we have to give them an update that says it's not available yet, you chip away a little bit at that morale. And when you can't give an exact date because you're waiting on somebody else's approval process, and then even worse when that gets delayed because factors outside of your control are making things more delayed, that you're trying to figure out how do you keep, you know, this conversation about how AI is going to change the way we work. How do you keep that conversation healthy and going when it feels incredibly slow to get there? Now, with the fast, this is mostly about what's happening outside. You are watching new tools be developed. You're reading other people's posts about how they've changed the way that they do their design systems and have their design system documentation automatically updated using an agent that is both, improving the design system and updating the documentation of the design system. And you're like, wow, I wish we could be doing that already, but we can't yet because we don't have the tools yet. But I want to understand it, just so we're ready and that we can do these things as soon as they're available. So the main ways that I've been focusing on, channeling the energy during this time is to talk about learning. So we actually did recently launch something we called AI Learning Labs. And the goal there is to say, hey, let's figure out how to make the most of the tools that we have right now and, do as much as we can with those, while also learning about and preparing ourselves for hopefully the near future when more tools be turned on such that we can start making internal agents, for example, and understanding those things as much as possible, taking the design route of basically designing what we want these future processes and flows to be like, even if we don't have them yet. So there's a lot of that type of stuff going on. And probably one of the more interesting ways that I've been using the tools that we have is actually around using Copilot. We have Microsoft Copilot, using Copilot as a coding assistant to write Figma plugins. And it surprisingly works, even though Copilot is not a coding environment when you're using it just in the Microsoft Office 365 stack. But since it understands code and can create code snippets for you, you're actually able to use it as a coding assistant. And because it can access all of the public documentation from Figma about what is a plugin, it knows what's required to make those plugins. So that's been something really exciting to explore as a way to really push the boundaries of what we can do with a really, really base AI model that we have available to us at work, and do something actually really meaningful and actually be impacting, some of the workflow processes, operational processes that we have by being able to use it as a coding assistant to build plugins. And even before that, I was using it as a coding assistant for the Microsoft Power Apps and Power Automate platforms. So helping, using it as a helper to do things faster in those realms where maybe that's not your full stack expertise area, writing the plugins, writing the, Power Automate flows. So focusing on the good, and showing others, especially through these learning labs, about, hey, here's how you can push these tools to the max, even if they aren't the tools that you wish we had, that you wish were turned on. So making the best of what you have. And I'm really reminded of this one quote from back in the day, back when the iPhone was really first getting big. It was by Chase Yarvis. I had to write it down here to make sure I attribute him correctly. But Chase Yarvis said, the best camera is the one you have with you. So talking about cameras where you can have the most impressive, camera, DSLR, and so on, but the camera you have with you is going to be the best camera in that moment, even if it is just, a camera that's on your phone. And that's the way I feel about the tools we have at work, where, yeah, it might not be the best AI that we know exists out there, but let's make it be the best that we have available to us. On the flip side, I want to talk a bit about how fast the industry is changing. In fact, later this week is Config. And, these tools that we're just talking about, making plugins for Figma, these tools are probably going to have updates. They're going to change. And this is happening so much faster than it did, you know, a decade and a half ago. Back when I first started as a designer, the tool of the trade was the Adobe suite. And, there was basically no competition. It was just the Adobe suite. But, eventually, more design user experience tools came out there. There was Axure, and then, Figma suddenly became a huge player in this. And now all of these different AI tools and then AI changes, they're happening so much more rapidly now than they did before. And operationally, this is a big shift because in the past, even if there was a new tool, that tool ran locally. So there wasn't as big of a IT and risk and security concern around turning on these new tools. It was just a matter of budget. Do we have the budget to buy this tool, this software for a employee? But now, because all these tools are, connected to our intranets, and there's a lot more vulnerability in the software stack. So there has to be a lot more scrutiny from IT, and rightly so, about the software we're using and how we're using it and what data it can access. But that then, takes us back around to the slowness of, individual teams, especially individual design teams, which are often a very small percentage of the overall workforce in a company. They can't get the access to the tools that they need to run at pace with industry as they could back when, you didn't need a, enterprise level review of the tooling you're using. It just said, hey, yeah, turn this on for these, 100 people and you're great. You can go. So, yeah, that's just kind of a bit of a side in terms of how things are changing and how many teams, feel stuck in this dichotomy of everything's changing really fast, but where I'm working with the actual tool stack that I have, that's changing really slowly. And there's that tension. And I don't have, necessarily the answers to how to solve that, but I just recognize that, that is a space that, we're in. I've been in that before at other companies, and I'm sure other people are in that right now too, where you see where other people are at, or how other people are able to run, and then you experience where your own teams are at and how slow things are going. I don't know how much of a, social media effect is going on. You know how for, sharing people's personal lives, people are always only sharing the good stuff online. So when you compare, your own life with other people's lives, you know, you're only seeing the good stuff from there. So I wonder how much of that is happening right now with all the AI adoption, where of course companies are gonna put forward the good positive stories and not necessarily the frustrating stories. So maybe even in those companies where they seem like they're really far ahead, maybe they're feeling some of those frustrations and just, not talking about it. Maybe. I don't know. All right. I promised in the beginning I would talk about not AI as well. So, in terms of moving fast and slow, there's the old saying of move fast and break things, and its counterpoint of move slow and fix things. And I feel like both can be true simultaneously. So, in the move fast and break things, I would focus that on your personal journey. So, the personal prototyping and iterating and trying things out for yourself. Don't wait to start trying and testing and practicing and prototyping. Start doing those things and iterate on those things and learn from those things. But in terms of your teams and your organizations and groups of people, that's where you want to be more intentional with the move slow and fix things. And the two, come together, where if you move fast for yourself and you learn and you build yourself up quickly, those learnings can help inform the move slow and fix things, because you've personally had a lot of, the trials and failures and learnings from moving fast with your own practice that can help do things in a more informed way when applying it to a team and a group. And okay, it does come back to AI again, because this is an example of how we've been doing this with the AI at work, where, we ourselves in the operations team, we are doing our own experimentation very intentionally, very quickly, trying to do as much as we can. And after we've done our own experimentation to bring back our intentional learnings to broader groups in our learning labs and sharing out to the broader org. But in not AI land, these prototype recordings are also my own, move fast and break things. Obviously, my last episode, some of the technical stuff was very broken, but I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to keep on iterating and learning and practicing and getting better at this format where I'm talking more off the cuff about a topic for about 15 minutes and seeing where this takes me. Um, if you keep watching along with these episodes, I'll probably try some different formats occasionally, but I want to keep doing this. I want to keep trying, picking a topic and talking about it for about 15 minutes and posting that and seeing how this iterates, how this changes over time. Maybe someday I'll officially kick it out of prototype mode and then it'll be the real deal. But for now, this is a prototype of Design Seeds, a podcast where I share ideas, seeds of ideas for designers and design ops folks. All right, enjoy the rest of your day.